The following is a live presentation of the Commercial Appeal.
Obviously coming off game two, really pleased with the way our guys came out and performed. Coming off the bye week, a lot of questions from our aspect of it, just how the guys would approach that week, and really wanted to see a lot of improvement from week one to week two, and I thought we were able to see that. We were able to improve in a lot of different areas. I thought the defense came out and had a dominant performance. The thing that I was most pleased with was we were 100% ball security on offense, and we were able to force 6 takeaways. And when you're able to do that throughout a game, and you put yourself in a great position to be successful, really pleased with our guys and their attitude, their approach. We came back out to practice last night, and our guys know that we have to continue to improve. And so we're excited about the week coming up. We got another opponent coming into the Liberty Bowl. So we're looking forward to having a great crowd, a lot of energy, and another night kick. It's going to be a tremendous atmosphere, and we're just looking to take the next step as a team.
This is the Tiger Football Podcast with Tom Shad, Jeff Calkins, and Phil Stukenborg.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back. Tiger Football Podcast is 2-0. Great job last week, y'all. Actually, y'all were...
We weren't here.
You weren't here.
No.
Jeff was...
I had a bye.
You had a bye.
Yeah.
You were dropping...
Isn't it funny, the terms? 100% ball security on offense. Like, it's just... We didn't turn the ball over. Like, 100% ball security on offense. It's just funny.
6
coaches
takeaways.
talk like coaches talk, right?
Coach speak. It was
good, though.
Language.
If you can turn them over... Like, I'm no John Madden, but if you can turn them over 6 times and you don't turn it over yourself, like your chances.
Okay, Phil...
Particularly if you're playing Kansas.
Okay, we'll open with this. First time that they've had 6 turnovers in a game, or created 6 turnovers in a game, since 2011 versus Marshall. And I saw that, and I looked up the game, and they lost to Marshall.
Right.
They were +6.
Those were difficult times,
at
Tom.
Home. How did I'm not trying to call you out on a specific game from however many years ago. Do you remember what happened in that game?
I don't. I just remember who was coaching. It was a tough time.
Those were difficult times.
We
don't want to relive those times, Tom.
I mean, that's almost like statistically.
A lot of things happen that you can't quite get your mind around happened back then, Tom.
Yeah, I think I probably just forgot it as well as most people did.
I was just I was like, they had to have won that game. I thought that was one of the 3. It was 3 wins during the Larry Porter era.
Yeah.
I thought that had to be one of them. But anyways, on a happier note, if you're a Memphis fan, 43-7 win over Kansas. Jeff and I were there. Thought it was... I mean, the initial takeaway was just Kansas is bad. Mm-hmm. But I think against a bad opponent, Memphis did a lot of things that you wanted to. Beyond the turnovers, we saw an improved run game. Offensive line was a little bit better. Riley Ferguson took care of the ball. Just general development on offense, and then the defense obviously doing a lot of good things as well.
Yeah, offensively, I thought noticeable Riley Ferguson, several times. Clearly tossing it away. You just couldn't. It was very clear. Now, he didn't get great protection. That's a continuing issue. But he made very different choices, and I thought that was very positive. And then you saw on the 2 touchdown throws what I've said all along, which is that the good of Riley Ferguson is really top shelf. And so both on the deep ball, which he placed exactly in the right place, and then on the fade to Mayhew was just a perfect throw. Nice catch too, by the way. But I thought there you saw that, when he's good, Riley Ferguson can be really good. And then, the running game was important to get that going. That's one that'll be interesting to see. I'm still a little skeptical. Will they be able to run the ball against Houston and Temple? Would that will be interesting. Will they? Because I think the offensive line is a continuing question. But you saw what you wanted to see there, and then the defense was really good, and the takeaways were a part of that. And I really do think it's striking. We've talked about it before, but afterwards, the amount of praise that is heaped on this defensive staff is staggering. All you just have to ask is why is the defense so good this year? And they just start talking about the coaching staff. All of them, pretty much. They just literally start talking about the coaching staff. We believe in them. They put us in the right place. It's so much better, so much different. It has just emerged as a clear theme. I think the pieces are better, but the pieces really do feel a level of confidence that they did not last year.
And it's funny, Ernest Suttles, I just came straight here from practice, and Ernest Suttles, after practice, said basically the same general question. It's all iterations of the same question, like, why is the defense better? And he immediately said, coaching staff, they're teachers. And that's what a lot of guys say, they're teachers. They're teaching us the scheme better. We're more comfortable in the scheme. We're more confident in the scheme. So that is striking, I guess, that, and obviously nobody's trying to take shots at the outgoing.
They're really not.
Staff.
They're more praising the current staff.
Right.
They're not, sort of by implication, it's just unavoidable. But they really are talking about how much they love this staff is really what they're saying.
Right.
Tom and I were talking about this yesterday, is that as you watch the defense, you notice that it doesn't seem like they're out of place. I think except for the one long touchdown run. Also, when you go back to Wilson's interception return for the touchdown, you see Jannard Avery putting pressure on the quarterback, which directly led to that pick and that hurried up throw. So just another byproduct of how well
he forced the first
playing.
fumble too. Jannard Avery did. He's a terror. He's been a terror. Lined up all over the place,
showing up where maybe he didn't last year as much.
No, he is clearly right now of anyone on defense. He has the most obvious impact on the game.
And a couple that we just talked to him after practice today as well. And one interesting thing that he said, I was asking him about the timing because that's one thing that stood out to me in the game is that. He has the strength, he has the speed around the edge, but the timing, he was going right in front, in between the center and the guard, the A gap, and he was just timing those. And that was, I think, the fumble, it was a low snap for Cozart, but he was right on top of it immediately. And he said that he's been watching film and studying the mannerisms of the center and the quarterback, and to get a better feel for when they're going to snap the ball.
Do you get the sense, by the way, that he's happy here? He obviously is the one. He was the one. Jamarius Henderson was one who you thought you might lose, and then ultimately did lose. And Jannard Avery, I don't know if he really wanted to be here. If they basically said we're not going to release you to go to Ole Miss, or what the circumstances were by which they kept him. But he's clearly having a huge impact. If that's how you measure happiness, he's got to be happy. Did he seem what's his manner been like?
Yeah, no, he seems happy. It's. I still haven't gotten a great feel of what happened in that. I think it was February or something. It was right before signing day. I still haven't gotten a great feel about what was the comments about wanting to transfer and all that. So I don't know. He seemed perfectly happy, and I think that kind of how the defensive staff is using him helps because they're giving him an opportunity basically on third downs to just rush the passer, and they're putting him all over the place and putting him in good spots to get sacks, to get forced fumbles, to kind of build up his stats. And I think he's a guy, even last year when I first got here, that I looked at and said he's got a chance to play in the league. And I think that that's kind of his mindset probably as well. And so, to be able to kind of rack up some of these stats and really make a huge defensive impact in a lot of these games like we saw on Saturday, I think that helps him, and I think he's been happy with that. But yeah, the one run play. So I was going to mention you mentioned the one time that they were misaligned.
Right.
So they had the 61-yard touchdown run or something that they gave up. The coaching staff has said that they didn't see that play on film once, and they basically said the coaches have said that's on us. So even that, in terms of defense, it was basically like when you're evaluating defense. Man, they were great except for that one big play. The coaching staff is kind of absolving them of that because they were kind of slanted to the right side, I guess, or the near side of the press box. And they ran it away from that, and everybody was out of position. So for them to just absolve of that. So, anyways,
how did Chris Ball, by the way? Do we know because he was co-defensive coordinator at Arizona State, right?
Yep.
And our understanding is that he took a pay cut to come here.
He did.
Do we know why Chris Ball took this job?
I don't. I haven't asked him. I think obviously there are attractive qualities about Norvell. And I think the job.
I do think it's a sense, by the way, that a lot of people who came here literally came here because they believe in Mike Norvell.
Yeah.
But didn't you get the sense with the staff that there's a lot of that?
A lot of people just, they'd gotten to know him and they said, this guy's going to go places. We're going to go be with him.
Right.
So I think
Geoff, this is the same thing you heard when Justin came here. That the people that joined the staff believed in Justin. And I've told the story many times about Ricky Hundley, the defensive line coach, saying this guy is going to be, he called him the next Steve Spurrier at the time.
Right.
Just someone that was going to be successful.
Right.
And
so you latch onto him and
these coaches see
right,
that.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, that Chris Ball said, he said on Norvell's radio show last week that he's just really happy in Memphis. And so I don't know if there were things off the field that, he just saw Memphis as a place that he could live. And he said, pretty openly, this is a place where I want to be for a while. I think Chris Ball's moved, what did he say? moved like 9 times in the past 20 years or something. So he's just been moving all over the place, and maybe that played a role in it as well. But I haven't asked him specifically. I did think that was interesting. I think he was the only assistant. We got the salaries for assistant coaches 2 weeks ago or something. I think he was the only one that took a pay cut. A lot of them got sizable bumps up in pay. So, but yeah.
Well, it's certainly been a success story so far.
Unanimous praise, pretty much from players. The one big kind of storyline going into the game was the run game, the offensive line. We had kind of said, okay, maybe the first game was just an aberration. Do you guys have lingering concerns, I guess, about the run game, about the offensive line? I mean, I thought pass protection was almost the bigger issue against Kansas than run blocking, but do you still have lingering concerns there?
I don't. I mean, I'm starting to see. I keep going back to Patrick Taylor and enjoy watching him run. His ability, I think, to make a jump cut.
That was what that cut that he made at that size. To me, there were two impressive things about the running game. Dorland Dorcius's run in the end zone, was beast mode stuff, right? But the cut that Patrick Taylor made was unbelievable,
and he does it effortlessly. And you can see the footwork, and you just go, "This guy's gonna continue to evolve and become someone that will lead this run game down the road." Of course, along with Tony Pollard, who looked really good late too. He just has some things about him that make you think he will be a huge contributor down the road.
Yeah, Patrick Taylor. So I can't remember if I said it on the podcast or not, but I really think he's like a little bit smaller version of Jarvis Cooper in terms of weight wise, but his feet are just immensely better. And that's the one thing. Like when he first got here, somebody told me, he said, just watch Patrick Taylor's feet, and that's a huge. I mean, especially like you mentioned the jump cut and kind of when he's going through some of those creases. Makes a huge difference. So it'll be interesting kind of carry-wise. You know, Sam Kraft practiced today. Norvell said yesterday that he probably could have played against Kansas. And so it'll be interesting. You bring him back. Darrell Henderson came down with a illness of some kind midway through the game, so he wasn't available in the second half. You presumably get him back. You still have Tony Pollard. You still have Patrick Taylor. I mean, suddenly you've got Dorland Dorsis. Suddenly you've got a lot of cooks in the kitchen, per se. It'll be interesting to see kind of how they divvy up carries. And you know, do they give a guy like Patrick Taylor, who has led the team in rushing the past 2 games, the majority of the carries, or do they continue to ride with kind of the horses, I guess, with the Dorland Dorciuses and Darrell Hendersons?
Yeah,
speaking of injuries and people coming back, you get a lot of questions about Jackson Dillon.
Oh, do I?
What do you tell people about Jackson Dillon?
I mean, the Jackson Dillon story hasn't really changed since fall camp. You know, we talked to him before the season. He had 2 off-season procedures on his knee.
And there weren't supposed to be 2. He was supposed to have 1 off-season procedure on his knee. It did not go well. And so then he had another to fix that one. That one was not so far before fall camp began, right? Was this July 4th? When was
I believe he said July, yeah.
Was that when it was in July? He had the second procedure in July. And then since then he just hasn't fully healed? Is that our understanding?
I think he's fully healed. I think it's just kind of a touch and go as he's working his way back, because he did practice in fall. He was getting some second-team reps, and there were days where he would go and do an entire day's practice and be fine. But I think it's just one of those things. I mean, when you have a presumably serious injury like that, you know, it takes a little bit of time, and sometimes, you know, you can, you're getting a feel for yourself as much as anything. So he did not practice today from what I could tell, or if he did, it was very limited. So I think he's a guy that you're just going to have to continue to see, you know, what he can do in practice and kind of go from there in the game.
It's too bad because at some level, they don't miss him. You know, they're getting really splendid linebacker play, and I don't know that they miss him. Unless you start remembering back, Phil, to what he was when he was at his best. They would miss that. Like if you had that Jackson Dillon, that was an impact player who was single-handedly destroying offenses.
Go back to the Miami Beach Bowl.
They miss that.
Yeah.
They don't miss a gimpy Jackson Dillon. But they certainly miss that, and it'll be too bad if we don't see that again.
You just wonder if he showed up more under the previous defensive coordinator's scheme than where he would fit now. I don't know where would he fit now if he's 100% healthy and ready to play this weekend.
Well, I think DeMarco Montgomery basically at the tail end of last year kind of surpassed him on the depth chart and was taking the majority of reps at that kind of hybrid outside linebacker. Defensive end spot. And so I think it's still DeMarco Montgomery's kind of job to lose in terms of first team. And the one thing, I almost put this in the morning after, but DeMarco Montgomery might be, and we don't talk about him a lot, JUCO guy, joined the program last year, might be the toughest dude on that defense. I've been told he played hurt for the majority of last year, gets dinged up in practice all the time. He got dinged up, what made me think of it was like the first quarter, somebody rolls onto his ankle or something, and they're going to sub him out, and he just waves him on and keeps playing, and you don't notice like a drop-off really with that. So I think the staff really values his toughness and his leadership. And so I think even if Jackson Dillon was 100% healthy, he would have to come and kind of reclaim that starting spot. And obviously they rotate a lot. So, you would see both of them if they were healthy. But I think DeMarco Montgomery is probably still going to be the first guy out there until Jackson Dillon proves differently. So, obviously next week, heading into Bowling Green, do you think this is going to be similar to the game that we saw last year? Last year was probably, I don't know, Jeff and I were there, probably the most entertaining game, I guess, of the season, 44-41. Comes down to basically Arthur Mollett, who'd been burned for much of the game, coming up with a big play there at the fourth quarter to seal it. Do you expect a similar kind of fast-paced shootout type deal, or do you think it's going to be a little bit different with this Bowling Green team having a new quarterback, new coach?
You hope. I mean, that obviously they still snap it quickly. It's still very fast-paced, but will it be as effective? I will be surprised. I mean, they had big-time receivers. They had a big-time quarterback. And the Memphis defense was woefully unprepared, either because people were new or because they whatever. So I will be stunned if Bowling Green lights up Memphis the way they lit them up last year. And so no, I would hope and imagine that the final score would look more like the MTSU Bowling Green game. That Memphis, they put up their 20 or something. I don't expect Memphis to get, just because they snap the ball enough, they're going to be flinging it around. I think Bowling Green will score, but hopefully it'll be a comfortable Memphis victory as opposed to the thrilling nail biter that was last year's.
Yeah, it just seems like there's so much new there, and you've written about this so far with Bowling Green. I don't see it being a whole lot different than maybe what you saw last weekend.
Yeah, the one thing about Bowling Green, so they have a new quarterback, but he did start for them. So the guy that they had last year, Matt Johnson, had been hurt the previous year. It's a guy, I forget his name. I'm afraid that I'll mispronounce it, Napke or something to that effect. He started, I guess that was 2 years ago. So the guy that they're bringing in is not like he's never played quarterback before at this level. So they're comfortable there, and then obviously still going to try to push the pace. So I think there will be some similar things, but I think it'll be a little bit more lopsided. Yeah, and that kind of the last thing I wanted to ask, I think I wrote about this in the morning after on Sunday. It's really interesting to me that we are now 3 weeks into the season, and Memphis has played two opponents that it very clearly should have beat them handily. You can make an argument that I think they're 17-point favorites or something over Bowling Green. So we could get 4 weeks through the season and not know kind of what the true capabilities of this team are. So what do you guys, just from practice, from the first two games, what do we know about this team after 2 games? Like what can you safely say? Is there anything that you can pinpoint and say, I've seen enough, I know this to be
by
true?
the way, I have no problems with the fact that that the season is unfolding this way for a couple of reasons. One is, once upon a time, they've played teams that we knew they should beat, and they did beat. Once upon a time, we didn't know they should beat these teams. They'd play crappy teams. We didn't know they should beat them, and they'd lose to them. Like, UT Martin is an example, or getting smashed by Arkansas State and getting, so even just to have the level of normalcy that comes with these are teams we're supposed to beat and we're doing it is sort of, again, it goes back to it wasn't always thus. So I appreciate that. Secondly, I think it's nice to build up some momentum, particularly with the first staff, with a new staff, to both momentum in the fan base, some belief in the team itself that whatever they do is going to work and has success. So I don't mind that at all. The fact that we're going to have, presumably, let's hope that they're 3-0 without any real sense of what they are. That seems to me to be okay, because then you have the tests yet to come. I got no problem with that. In terms of what they are, I think they're exactly what they are when we started before. I think the defense is like, I'm heartened because I've seen on the field what I hope to see, so that's good. I'm heartened about Riley Ferguson, because I really didn't know what to expect, but I've seen enough really good things from him to think that that he can continue to grow and develop and be the quarterback over the next 2 years. And then I'm a little less, I think I expected to see just overall more explosiveness and consistency from the offense than I have seen. And that goes back to largely offensive line troubles, but just execution issues and everything else. And so to me, I said going in that I think they're a 7-win team. I still think they're probably a 7-win team. I might even say a 6-win team, 6 or 7-win team, which is what I thought they were going in. I'm more faith in the defense and the quarterback necessarily than I would have had going in, and a little bit less faith in just sort of, Mike Norvell always talks about how he says it's going to come, the offense is going to come. We haven't seen it so far. It has not been an explosive offensive juggernaut, and so we're waiting to see that a little bit. I think that's what we know, and we know the special teams are pretty good. Even though Jake missed a kick this past week, he came back and banged in a 51 from 50. Punting's been good. We know the special teams are good. I think they're a 7-win team.
Phil?
I think it's been great for this staff to have this kind of schedule, as you said, to see this defense develop as it has and watch it kind of gain some confidence. I think that's been good. Also been good for Riley Ferguson to go through this and kind of learn what he needs to learn. And almost take away something that I think Anthony Miller said after the game, or maybe it was after practice, just that when he said they didn't play good and yet I think put together a game and win 43-7. You believe him? I mean, when he says that, or is he just talking? I think he was telling the truth, that there were some things that weren't clicking, maybe offensively, that he felt that they could have done better. So if that's the case, then this has been a good start, good schedule for them. Yeah.
So he said we played mediocre on Saturday, which I thought was interesting given kind of the lopsided.
But knowing his personality, is that something that's, is he telling the truth?
I think, and I think that's kind of the general sense. Norvell has talked about it, that it's the offense is going to come along. I think there is a general sense that just in terms of, learning, I've been told that learning defensive schemes is a little bit, it just comes a little bit quicker just because it's not quite as complex as what you're trying to do on offense. And so, I think it was early in camp, I said, man, the defense, is way ahead of the offense. And somebody said, well, that's how it should be. You would be worried if the offense was ahead of the defense, which is kind of what it was last year, in all honesty. The offense looked a lot better in fall camp than the defense did. So I think we'll see improvement on offense, but I think you're right that we're still waiting to see. There's been some glimpses of the explosiveness, the Anthony Miller play. There have been a couple to Roderick Proctor that have just been beyond his reach, and you hit one of those, then maybe you have a little bit better sense of.
Who wants to be that defensive back that Anthony Miller twisted into a pretzel there from the 45-yard line on
Bamboozled. That was I was so excited to work that word into a game story.
Yeah. By the way, did either of you have any thoughts on the crowd? We talked a little bit about it in the press box. It was just south of 35,000, and again, that's one where I heard some complaints about it. That various people were disappointed. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm remembering the days of 17 and 13 and whatever else. I think 35 is perfectly respectable. I had no complaints about it at all.
My guess is that people are watching. I saw the game on TV. I was out of town, and it did look not sparse, but it was scattered, and so it wasn't a good look. You're watching games on college football.
The stadium's too big for them. It's 35,000. That means it's half empty. Plus, my understanding, various people have written me and said, can they do something about the camera angles? Because is this true that the camera angles shows the visiting team side?
It's true.
Why the hell do they show the visiting team side? Because the visiting team side was clearly emptier than the home team side. And so I get letters about this. Why doesn't someone talk to them about showing the home team side as opposed to video? I gather on TV it didn't look good. To me, it looked like it was half full. It looked like the stadium's too big. But 35,000 people, I don't know. This isn't Alabama. You're not supposed to draw 65. I think 35,000 people, a little overclassed, whatever. I think it's fine. Hopefully you get 42,000 for Cincinnati, which is sort of a bigger game or whatever. But they should be averaging somewhere around. Should be. If they can hit 40,000, that's a good number for the year. And so, big games you get bigger, and small games you get smaller. And I think 35 is okay.
Well, to your point, I think that you see the games in Houston and Cincinnati, two programs that are doing well. They're 40,000 seat stadiums, and so they're getting 35 or so, and it looks a lot bigger.
It looks better. It looks different. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I heard some fans terrible. 35,000 people. That's not bad.
Well, it is interesting, the 40,000. Like, it seems like if you had 39,998, people would be like, I don't know. And then you hit the 40,000 mark,
right,
and
that mark
it's kind of like that magic thing.
But I think they're still like trying to, push themselves to a better conference, and in their mindset, they want to have huge crowds to show the nation. Yeah, I think that's part of it too. I think the fans that are complaining about that just want to see this consistent crowd of 45,000, and kind of be the the next Louisville or something like that.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, Jeff, that the goal. I mean, if you're averaging 40,000, that's great. So this might be a little bit down, but when you have Temple in on a Thursday night on ESPN, like a whiteout game, or when you have Houston come in the last game of the season, you're probably going to well exceed 40,000. It'll all kind of even out. So it'll be interesting to see crowd-wise, Bowling Green, what that game draws. They're doing a big 901 promotion. I think you can buy single game tickets for $9.01. Interesting if that crowd can outdo Kansas, and interesting to see how the team will do. So we will be there. We will be back next week. Break it all down for you. Thanks again for listening. We will talk to you all next week.
Like the Commercial Appeal on Facebook and follow on Twitter at Memphis News. This is the Commercial Appeal.